everyone, welcome back to Planet Zoo. Today I'm giving a little tour of my still as of yet unnamed European city zoo. 2.5 years playing Planet Zoo and I still suck at the naming conventions. Hey ho, this zoo has been an ongoing passion project of mine for the last 7 months. And, I won't lie, it sure is a challenging project, but challenging in a good way. If you're new here, concept of this zoo in a nutshell is that it's a city zoo built within the sprawling landscape of a stately home. Last time we took a tour of the zoo, we had the general layout and the stately home in the centre of the zoo was all built. The road system was built and we had one side of the city backdrop done. Oh, and the entrance and the transport hub was completed as well. Things have certainly moved on a bit since then. I've had a big push over the last several months and I've completely finished the city backdrop, and I've also got one of the 6 sections of the actual zoo done. Finishing the city backdrop was a huge undertaking and I'm so glad that that bit of this build is finished. New additions for the city backdrop. On this side we've got some budget shopping areas, and then beyond the transport hub on the other side is a more affluent shopping district. Both of these sections, I've taken heavy influence from UK towns and cities, and to be honest, there is kind of a mix of you'll get the posher areas and you'll get some basic, more economical areas, I guess. On the budget side, we've got a rather stern looking block of concrete flats and the typical budget shops down below. First and foremost, I've got a pawn shop in. Not that kind, get your mouth out the gutter. What I mean is those pawn shops that are the buy-sell loan shops. I've got this in here because sadly this does seem to be one of the more successful ventures that's plaguing the UK high street at the moment. So for realism, it does deserve a place here. Next to this is getting into the shopping square. Now this building down here, this was originally going to be a department store, but again in the name of realism, I thought it would be a neat idea to make this into a derelict store that's gone out of business. Other stuff around the square, I've got in a little budget supermarket, and this area wouldn't be complete if we didn't put in a pub. So you can go do your shopping and stop in for a pint before you get the bus home. That's budget shopping in a nutshell. So onto the fancier shopping district. For this, the buildings are drastically different from the drab concrete jungle of the budget block. This section is built with history behind it. I've got a Victorian indoor market, and that leads out to a few little stalls for an outdoor market. This provides a nice little home for that Pip Shop smoothie stall that I built about 6 months ago. Finishing off this little corner, I've got in, yes again, another pub. This one, it might look a little overdressed with all those window boxes, but I based this off of a real life pub that I found in London, and they really do go overboard on the planters there, so why not make use of that in game as well. The buildings in here after the pub are basically a bit of filler. Now this one, I did steal this from one of my previous builds, but I love the style of it so much and it fits in so well with the architecture going on here. I thought it would be alright to put it in. After this is a few more filler buildings, and you guessed it, another pub. Yay! Jokes aside, this one is based on a pub that I go past quite frequently in my local area, and I've wanted to build this in Planet Zoo for quite a while, so there was a big corner here that needed something in it, and I was getting a bit tired of doing the Victorian architecture and also doing the modern architecture, so I thought it would be nice to fit this in here. Now, what I mean by I was getting tired of doing the modern architecture, this other side here, I spent about 2 weeks, maybe a bit longer actually, creating all of these high-rise buildings. I wanted this side to be filled with more residential buildings because I'd spent a lot of time doing all of the commercial areas, all the shopping areas, the business district and whatnot. So the big thing for this was it needed to be tall, and that's why it's filled with high-rises. It's having the tall, high buildings that add so much to the build, especially when you're actually in the zoo and you see all that in the background. That's the whole reason I spent months and months and months working on just the backdrop of the actual zoo. Which leads nicely into us taking a look around the zoo. Concept of the zoo itself, it's split into 6 sections. so one section for each continent. The first section that I've tackled here is Europe. Coming through the main entrance, you take a right-hand path, and first building you come across is, of course, the bathroom. Always a good idea to situate the bathrooms by the entrance. Following the path around, the first habitat we have is the grey seal. Split level with this habitat, so the stairs take you down to the underwater viewing area. There's also a ramp down here as well. Something I always consider in my builds is accessibility. Even though that's not something that's in the game as of yet, I still think it's important for realism to think of accessibility when you're designing these enclosures. I also like to add education zones so that you get that full zoo experience. You're not just going to look at pretty animals, you're going to learn about the animals and understand them. So down here, now I built this even before the conservation pack was announced, which is out very soon. So yeah, very welcome. But I'd already planned space for something like that here, and I've got a couple of posters up that teaches you how to deal with seals in the real world, how to behave, and the effects of microplastics on seal population. Sort of topics that you would definitely want to educate people on. Anyway, let's go back up the stairs. The enclosure continues at ground level around to this other side. This is nestled in with a small amenities courtyard, which I've done back in the traditional style of building here. Around this side of the path is where the education talks take place, so the in-game education point. Something that works really well here is where I've made my own signs. It's an idea I've had to add some little details around the zoo. So taking pictures and then uploading that into the media and having little pictures of the zoo inside the zoo. I thought that was pretty neat, and it's great for filling up little spots like this. Anyway, you can either walk through the talk point or you can walk around the back end of the talk point. And here I've got a little vending machine set up on the sides of the wall and a the ATM as well, in case you need money for the vending machine, although that only gives out notes, so ignore me. But this pathway brings you out to the other side of the seal enclosure, so there's plenty of places to view from all aspects. So a nice interactive all-round habitat there. Behind this, I've got in the fallow deer. I struggle a bit making enclosures for the grazing animals. Their habitats in game and in real life tend to be a little uninspiring because these animals just need a lot of open space for grazing, so not a great deal going on with the fallow deer enclosure. Behind the fallow deer, we've got my favourite animal added in the Europe DLC, the European badger. For this one, I've gone with the rustic farm type of building. So using that lovely piece they added with the DLC, that the rustic cobblestone, I want to say wall piece. The badgers in game require a lot more space than you'd think they'd need. So having these buildings around with a lot of empty space inside, it helps fill up their needs while enabling the kind of open space I think they need up front. Although I did add a little sleeping compartment in the hard shelter here, the badgers don't use it. They don't go anywhere near that window. Honestly, they spend most of the time in the burrow, which I've nestled up here within the overgrowth, which I think is more realistic, to be honest. Since they do spend most of their time in the burrow, I have also added the burrow cam, so the visitors still have something to look at when they're sleeping in there. Next up is the reindeers. Reindeers could have sat in the North America section, but honestly, even with the Europe DLC, that we got another loads of animals with that, the range of European animals to choose from in the game is still quite sparse. So I figured it was more important to put animals that do have some presence in Europe into the Europe section of the zoo, even if they're more prominent in other continents. Like with the fallow deer, this isn't the most inspiring of habitats because the reindeers need a lot of space to graze. Next animal up is the timber wolves. Originally, I wasn't going to put the timber wolves in the Europe section at all because they have such a presence in places like North America. But there's already so many animals in North America, I thought, oh, sod it, just put them in here. And I'm glad I did because I came up with a great idea. I used a lot of the Nordic architecture for this enclosure, and like the seal habitat, This is a split level. So at the ground level here, I've got this open building that stretches right across the whole habitat. And there is pathing under there, so visitors can sit down on these benches here and have a little look around. What I also have in here is a concept I've called Walk with the Wolves. And this is a path system that takes you from the entrance here down into a protected pathway within the enclosure. So guests get a really good view of the wolves from here. It's almost like this is a walk-through enclosure, but obviously with a protected walkway because the wolves are not friendly to humans, not at all. I really enjoy building this enclosure. Making use of height differences really adds to the feeling of being up in the mountains somewhere, and adding the extra walk-through path. I mean, it took forever to build that custom barrier in here and getting it to line up properly. That was a proper nightmare. But I think it's a neat feature, and yeah, one of my better habitats, let's put it that way. But we'll move on because there's still a few to go. Coming out of the wolf enclosure, this brings you to another amenities courtyard. For this, I've played around with the levels here to add some depth. This side is a tiered restaurant with some outdoor seating. Big change in the architecture here, moving away from Northern Europe more into southern and a warmer climate. That plays well with having outdoor seating. On the other side of the courtyard, I've put in a little drinks cabin. For this, I've gone back to the very, very classic zoo style of using timber buildings and having little cabins like this dotted around with amenities inside. There's picnic style seating out here, which, frustratingly, the guests seem to blooming always leave their trash on the tables all the time. Even with the trash cans dotted around everywhere. I mean, honestly, how many people in this day and age get up from a table and just leave their trash on the table? Maybe I just need more janitors to clean it up. My idea here is that throughout the zoo, there's going to be amenities, little sections like this dotted about. I think I was going for 1 every 3 enclosures, something like that. Even if it doesn't get used by zoo guests, I just want it there for some realism. Behind the courtyard here brings us out to the very big flamingo habitat. I would normally put the flamingos in the Africa section, but as I've mentioned before, we're kind of lacking on variety of animals we can use with Europe. So you do get flamingos in Europe. Well, the sign says you do anyway, so I'm going to trust the developers know far more than I do about nature. Design of the habitat, I did spend a little longer on this one. I always seem to spend longer with the flamingos because they're such elegant, beautiful creatures in my eyes. And I feel like they deserve a nice, elegant, pretty place to live as well. So there's this huge shallow pool for them to wade in. And I have these very delicate timber pavilions inside as well. The one in the water, I've got a little mirror fascinator in there for them to amuse themselves with. And the one over here is shading the shrimp pool. I think it's called the shrimp wading pool, something like that. The flamingo habitat is on a split level, which I think I've done quite well to conceal that. Creating that in this way, it's enabled me to add this raised walkway that goes around the back, and that connects with the raised level on the main pathway. At the back of the enclosure here is a staff area, and with this, I love that using the null barriers, I've been able to leave this area quite open. My idea with handling staff areas is to not necessarily hide them from view entirely, but to make them mostly unobtrusive in their own right. It's difficult working with the staffing areas because you've got those big ugly boxes that you start out with. So I usually try to mitigate that by making them as small as possible and keeping to single story. So this is a custom made staff building using those amazing panel pieces, and that helps you to build a little smaller than using the grid pieces. It does take a lot more time, there's a lot of fiddling rather than using a grid, but it looks so much better. Before moving forward, I think we're going to just step back a little bit, go past the flamingo habitat again and take a look at the palm house, because otherwise I'll forget and we won't come back to it. This palm house and the surrounding area is a highly manicured section of the zoo, leaning more on the concept of this being a stately home rather than a zoo. So we've got the walled gardens and we've got the glass house back here. I've always planned to add a glass house to this zoo, right back, goodness, years ago when I first started a British zoo. I knew I was going to add a glass house at some point. Never got around to building one, so this is a first for me. Originally, my idea was to use the glass house to house some of the exhibition animals, but my dilemma with that is the size of the exhibition boxes. Pretty much the same as I have with the staff buildings. It's all that big boxy square thing that it's difficult to work around it and make something look good while you've got that big boxiness as well. To get a decent number of exhibition boxes in, the glass house would have had to have been huge to accommodate them all. I really didn't want my glass house dominating the scenery that much. So the animals have gone and I turned this into a palm house. This just looks so much better than it being bigger and broader if I'd put the animals in. Right, let's get back on track. You follow this path through this way and that brings us out at the Eurasian lynx habitat. This is a great little space back here. And I've added something into this habitat that I've really wanted to look into for ages, making a custom climbing frame that wraps around the trees. Took a little bit of time to figure that out. It's worth noting, if you want to do one of these yourself, you need to give the animals a reason to go up there. If you just create the frame, they won't be interested, they'd rather walk around on the ground. As soon as I added the scratching post, they're up there all the time now. So yeah, very happy kitties in there and happy plastic swans because it works. I did have a little think about the animal behaviours when I put this habitat together. So the hard shelter here is tucked way at the back because the lynx can get quite stressed with too much attention. So I've provided them plenty of quiet space. There's loads of different areas they can go to and hide in the bushes and things. The height on this one drops down quite significantly as well, so that the animals aren't directly face to face with the guests. Unless they're going to the scratching post, then it's really close to the guests. All in all, a nice little habitat that was fun to build. Next up, the path this side, under the archway, that brings us back out at the amenities by the grey seals. However, this also connects down the other way, which takes you back over to the area by the flamingos. In the middle on the way through there, though, we've got the Alpine ibex enclosure. This habitat was a bit of a challenge because it's slap bang in the middle of the park. So creating the height and depth that you need for a mountainous enclosure like this, without relying on a back wall that you can put a big wall on it and nobody cares because you can't see behind it. Well, it was interesting to work with something where I didn't have the luxury of that. It was fun at least to try and come up with a concept that would work. Something else you can tend in with when you're building for the ibex is that big rock climbing enrichment. It is huge. You also can't put anything in the front of it to try and blend it into the landscape because they won't climb up it if you have stuff at the front. So I think I did quite well of blending it in. I've got stuff at the back. We've got the path leading up a little bit around it. That adds a little bit of depth rather than just plonking the rock on the flat ground. This is another one of those enclosures that has quite a vast difference in the height, but you'd certainly expect that with one of these mountainous ones anyway. But on that note, that is everything. As you can see, this truly is a mega build. I'd say I'm well over 100,000 pieces at this point, and there's still 5 sections to go. So far, the PC is handling the workload well, no crashes, although this zoo is now taking a really long time to start from the start menu. My next step is to move on to Asia. I look forward to making you another zoo tour when that's complete. Thanks so much for watching, bye for now.